Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us for this town hall. Tonight's topic is the OBERER PUD application that's before council. Again, I'm Josue Salmeron, the village manager. So thank you for joining us tonight on Zoom. Here in Zoom, we have 63 participants, and welcome everyone here and welcome everyone who's joining us via the other virtual viewing options that we have, and that's Facebook, YouTube, and Channel 5. It's been a long time since I've done a town hall. I missed those, I was going to say I missed those times when we were doing the COVID updates once a week and twice a week, but I don't, because there were trying times. We're still in trying times. We have seen COVID cases unlike what we saw before we had the vaccine. So it's a scary world out there, and I hope you're all being safe, as safe as you can be, and you're following all the recommendations, and you have your shots and your boosters. The only way that we will get through this is by following those precautions and doing it together. Vaccines and all those precautions only work if we're all doing them. So I hope everyone's doing their part. All right, welcome. So tonight we're talking specifically about the PUD application. What is actually the application that's before council? What are they considering? What are their options? So we'll talk about the three options that are before them as it relates to the PUD application. We're going to go into some detail about the alternate plan, but not too much detail, because council isn't deciding if they're going to accept the PUD or accept the alternate plan, which is what the zoning regulation allows a property owner, in this case, OBERER development, what the zoning regulations allow them to do by right, by being the legal owners of the property. So we won't get into much detail about that, but because council is specifically hearing the merits of the PUD application. We're going to talk a little bit about how we got here. And I say we, that's me and my team, because we take the responsibility for doing our jobs, and that's what we've been doing our jobs. And so we're going to talk about how we go about doing our jobs, and how the documents that council have approved, that the community has weighed in on, such as the visioning documents, the comprehensive land use plan, all those planning documents that are important, and that's what's important, that you're involved in all these things, how those things have informed us and how we, the administration, need to do our job. Then we'll try to provide thorough responses to the numerous questions we have received. And we thought about starting with the questions that we have received, because many of you tonight may have the very same questions. So maybe if we get the information out, they will help give some insights to your inquiry, and you may have a follow-up question. So we wanted to start with those questions. Now, it is my understanding that I'm looking for Max. I know Max had sent a request to provide a presentation, a request that I had to reject because of the nature of the PUD application and the setup for this presentation. I will, obviously, if he's on tonight and wants to ask question, we will allow for that. And if other participants wanna give up their time for Max to ask his questions, we will allow for some of that. We want to make sure that all citizens are heard, and we need to be equitable in how we provide access and airtime for those questions. During the responses, you will hear from me and members of my team, which include Denise and Johnny. Also joining us is George OBERER and Greg Smith, who are representing the OBERER development. And any one of us could weigh in at any particular question. During the responses to the questions that we have received in writing, I will call on the individuals that will be providing a response to that. Now, if I miss anything, or any one of the folks responding to questions miss anything, you may hear from other members of the team to provide either additional information or anything that might have been missed. All right, so we cover that. So let's start off with the PUD application. If you haven't already seen the PUD application, the documents, the work session, I encourage you, I implore you to please go to YouTube, go to Facebook, go to our website and view those recordings, because there's a tremendous amount of information, perhaps detail, that we can't cover here because of time. A good example will be the 2 work sessions. There was a work session held with Planning Commission before Planning Commission approved this. And if you recall those hearings, they overwhelmingly approved this PUD application to be recommended to council. So there's that work session, very detailed. I thought it was very insightful. There's also the work session between the council work session where OBERER Development provided a presentation on the PUD application. I think that they're thorough. They provide a lot of detail in their presentation. So if you haven't already viewed those recordings, I encourage you to go and see them, as they provide a lot of insight, certainly material that we can't cover in this 2-hour session. And we decided to make this 2-hour session because we want to give you as many folks an opportunity to be heard in this process. There's at least 2 more opportunities for serious citizens to weigh in on this PUD application. The first one's going to be on January 18th. That's just in a few days away. That will be the first public hearing on the PUD application. As tradition with all of our legislation, council opens the hearings to the public, and public are given an opportunity to provide comments. So that will happen at least 2 occasions, on January 18th and again on February 7th. So there'll be 2 additional hearings. In addition to those hearings, you can always submit your questions or concerns to council, and you may do so by emailing Judy Kittner at clerk@yso.com. That's the easiest email to remember. We have these long domain extensions, but that's a relatively easy one to remember. So that's clerk@yso.com. All right, so how did we get here? Really, the short answer is the zoning code. The zoning code allows for the PUD, and it allows for a single-family development. Initially, George and Greg approached us with a development concept that would have a split development, part of it in the township, part of it in the village. I, along with the team, saw an opportunity to provide a more cohesive development, something that honored the existing layout and the nature in the neighborhoods, the surrounding neighborhoods. So we had several conversations, and those conversations led to first an annexation. That having an annexation, having it all be part of village, will contribute to a more cohesive development. The conversation evolved to what is now the PUD. After 18 months of meetings, collaborations, and going back and forth on what the zoning regulations allow, what the infrastructure allows, we now have this proposal for a PUD. So what the PUD addresses specifically for us as the administration, we have reviewed documents going back as far as 1977, and I'm specifically talking about the visioning document from the 70s, because that document addresses this question about the PUD, the 10 acres that is currently zoned as a PUD on the west side of the property. Well, we looked up those documents, and fortunately, a side mark, we have digitized all of our ordinances and meeting minutes for council going back to 1949. And that's why we were able to do this so effectively, because we have digital records of this information now. So I bring this visioning document from 1977 because in it talks about this 10 acres that are zoned as a PUD, and it specifically says that this property will be ideal for a mixed product development, a higher density development. So I think from many of the questions that I received on us not following our comprehensive land use plan, not honoring our visioning plan. That's simply not true. We have documents that say, one, we need more housing. We need several different types of housing, and where these properties, where this development could go in this area of town, the what was in the village and the Struan property that was in the township were designated for development. And I don't think that there's for dispute on the higher density. The number of units that the PUD would allow, I hope you've seen the alternate plan. The alternate plan, which would be a single family development according to the RA zoning regulations, would allow for the same number of units. So from a density perspective, there is no a density bonus or higher density being provided under the PUD. What it does allow is that mixed product development. It allows for the duplexes, it allows for the townhomes, and it also allows for an opportunity. It allows the village government an opportunity to pursue and further its affordable housing goal. And that is through that donated land of 1.8 acres, or almost 1.8 acres of donated land with stub and utilities. This is utilities that will be at the edge of the parcels for us to be able to tap into. So the PUD allows for those things that the single family RA development doesn't. So we are going to share all these documents, and actually the documents are already in the public space. The comprehensive land use web plan, we've created a website specifically for that plan, and that is the sustainableyellowsprings.com website. So I encourage you to go to that site. I'm gonna share that site now, because this is the first place to go to get the documents that we've been talking about for months and we're talking about tonight. So here it is, sustainableyellowsprings.com. This talks about our comprehensive land use plan. And it also references the different areas of the comprehensive land use plan. It has a future land use map. So you'll see the designation for this area that this is slated for development. Now, I specifically talked about the different unit types. The village needs housing of all types, of all price ranges. What the PUD allows us to address is more than one product type. You know, if we were to go with a residential RA development, we would see those high income sales for sale homes, of which the Bowen study says we need 120 of. With a PUD, we're able to get at that middle income for sale homes. You would have, if you tuned in at the work session on Monday, you would have heard George and Greg talked about that duplex product. That duplex product is estimated under current, by George and Greg under current construction cost to come in at that mid 200,000. That's a product that's a much more achievable by a broader range of income groups. So the PUD really allows for those other units to be addressed. Now, and also gives us that opportunity to get at that affordable affordable workforce housing or affordable housing. That's something that the village is going to be responsible for, and we hope to align the partnerships to be able to accomplish that. And accomplish that in a way that it's financially sustainable for all parties involved, including the village government. So the PUD really allows us to address more of the demand that exists in the village. The other one I encourage you to visit, and you would have seen me put something on Facebook about this. We have digitized all of our records going back to 1949, and they exist on our SharePoint site. If you want direct access to the site, please send me an email. We can provide you with access that will allow you to be searchable. We have made a link to the documents at the site publicly available. So if you took the link from Facebook, you can go directly into the files The only issue with going directly to the file directory is it limits the ability to search. But in those documents, you will see this resolution, this ordinance from the resolution from 1977 adopting the visioning plan. And in this document from 1977 is very detailed about the visioning for that property going back as early as 1970s. So it's on this plan. I will also share the link. I will create a page for council's presentation, for council's hearing on Monday that will provide a link to all these different documents in the order that we're discussing them now. But all of our documents going back to the 70s, they point to this area being suitable for development and what kind of development. So that's on the development documents. In the zoning regulation. Our zoning, just to be clear, our zoning regulations allow for both the PUD development and the single family RA development as it was presented at the work session on Monday. Those documents are also going to be shared at the public hearing, at the first hearing on January 18th. We're resubmitting all of the documents, and we're submitting new documents. There were a few things requested from council at the December hearing, and that was the alternate plan. The alternate plan has been completed, and we, the administration, has vetted it that it meets zoning regulations. So it as presented, it meets the zoning regulations for RA development. The other thing is the environmental study. We have secured the environmental study provided by OBERER. And in that environmental study, it talks about the stream. It also talks about without us actually envisioning that it would address a question that has come up now. It has come to my attention that in the community, folks, particularly individuals that are opposed to the PUD, have claimed that this was a garbage dump site. Well, we've gone through our records. We went above our due diligence to verify the claim, and this was not a garbage dump site. Let's just clear that out, whether it was for the village or anyone else. I also heard a reference that there were barrels being dumped at this site, and some folks have recollections of that. That is not true. We cannot find any information that vetted that. Further, we've gone further. We've reviewed the information from Yellow Springs Instrument on particularly the remediation plan. There's data, particularly on water quality and water contamination along that creek in those properties. That was not a site where barrels of whatever being dumped. That's just simply not true. So we vetted that information, and the environmental study that was submitted to council specifically addresses the environmental study done at that site, and it reviewed data going back as far as 1949. It looked at aerial views, aerial photography of the site. That was not a garbage dump site. So I just want to provide that because I think it creates a narrative, a disinformation in the community that it's unwarranted and unnecessary for the purposes of this PUD. Greg and George are available to talk more on that matter. So if that question does come up further, or Greg and George, if you want to touch on that once we get into the questions, let me know. So you'll see that environmental study. The enhanced traffic study has been completed, and the enhanced traffic study looking at additional traffic up to Hyde and 68. The report has come back, no significant impact that would merit any traffic adjustments on that area. Again, Greg and George can speak more onto that if we need to. But in short, that task has been completed. So you would see the alternate plan, the environmental study, and the traffic plan. Now let's move on to another area of facts and information that we want to share, and that's on our utilities. There's also been concerns about whether we have utility infrastructure to support this. If you were asking me this question, or you were claiming this in 2019, it might have had some relevance. because particularly on our sanitary system. In 2019, we did receive a letter from the EPA expressing concern that we were exceeding our flows. At that time, we were averaging 650,000 gallons per day on average. The administration has been working diligently over the last 2 years to reduce those flows, and we have. We have reduced sanitary flows by 35%. We went from 650,000 gallons per day on average flows down to 420,000 gallons per day on average flows. That's a 35% reduction. That 35% reduction makes plenty of room for not just this development of 140 units, but and more. So on sanitary flows, our sanitary system, both the collection system and the treatment facility, can accommodate the additional load from 140 units. In fact, when the project's completed, we might be at our 80%, so we would have more capacity there. With the continued improvements that we are working on the system, we anticipate having even more capacity. So that's on sanitary flows. On water production, the community took a strong stance and commitment to upgrade our water plant. We have a state-of-the-art water production facility that has the capacity to produce 1 million gallons per day. We're producing around 300,000. And we've continued to make progress to both our water production and water distribution system. We reduced major water losses. We detected a lot of leaks throughout the system last year, and we addressed them. And if you haven't seen the paper, there's a really good article in today's Yellow Springs News about the $1.2 million grant that we received to make further improvements to our water distribution system. So we've addressed a lot of issues, and there's a lot more water improvement projects ahead of us. So on water production, we have more than adequate capacity for a community twice our size. Now, we're not growing twice our size, but I just want to highlight that if we needed to produce twice as much water than we're producing now, we can. Not only do we have the production capability, but we also have the storage capability. We have 2 storage towers, each with a 1 million gallon water capacity. So that's really good capacity because we have water that should an emergency happen, we have enough storage capacity to service the village. So that's on water capacity. On electric capacity, last year, actually in 2020, we commissioned a study on both for our electric distribution and electric capacity. That study concluded that we had capacity for more than 300 housing units. So we have electric capacity to serve this development project. So that's on our utilities. Our roads, I appreciate Don Johnson. Don Johnson also has a letter in the Yellow Springs News today, and she, if you haven't seen that letter, I encourage you to read it because I am impressed with all the remarks in it. She has done a legal review of what we're facing with this PUD, and I agree with just about everything that Don Johnson has written. And in that letter, she talks about our road conditions. We have road conditions that would support this development. Further, Greg and George have highlighted that they're building out the infrastructure, building out roads that would support not just this development, but any traffic and load that will come from the development and adjacent property. We address sidewalks. The sidewalks, this project will build in sidewalks for the development, and the development team will put in sidewalks on the Spillane side of the road, on their side of Spillane. As a community, as an administration and as a community, we can agree that sidewalks are important, and we have public right-of-way all along Spillane from Hyde Road through Brookside to Allen Street. And if we choose, and if we find the financial resources, we can build sidewalks all along Spillane. You've seen a lot of the improvements we made to the sidewalk. Then last year I was labeled the lawn cop because we were clearing sidewalks to ensure that folks with all mobility challenges could get through sidewalks. We care about sidewalks. That's a commitment that we can make, and we can build out sidewalks all along Spillane. It doesn't come overnight, and it's not easy, but if we're committed, we can get it done. And I heard from many community members that sidewalks are important in multiple ways of getting around town and improving the access to neighborhoods are important. So let's get to it. Let's work on it, and let's get these important transportation projects done. So that's on infrastructure. On core infrastructure, we had questions about, well, we're going to need more police. The short answer is no. I don't think that we need more police officers to police this new development. Whatever services that were required of police, I think that we have the capacity from our public safety personnel to provide that service. So I don't think that we need to put out asks to hire extra police because of this development. I think we can absorb any additional call for services that would come in. Services from our crews. Obviously, this would be more linear footage to plow in times of snow. But the reality on that is that single family RA development could happen, and we would have the same responsibility to provide those street services. Now, with any new construction, the village is expected to get some additional tax revenue. And the idea on property taxes are that as new construction comes on, it puts a burden for additional services. And that's something that in my conversation with Johnny, that is something that we can accommodate. It goes a bit further. This development would have a feature that we don't have in other areas that have cul-de-sacs, and we do have cul-de-sacs in the village. This development, the cul-de-sacs will provide room for snow plowing activities. So that's a commitment we've gotten from the development team, that when we plow those cul-de-sacs, there'll be an area for us to collect the snow. So that's on the utility infrastructure and human resource demand side. We will now transition to the questions. And many of you have your cameras on. Maybe by show of hands, would it be, well, I'll just read the questions as we go along, and I'll point to members of my team to answer questions or weigh in on matters. On the first question, we had a question from the news about the difference between the PUD and the RA in terms of variances for properties. The RA zoning regulations do not allow for the duplexes and the townhomes because of those of how the dwellings are attached to each other. So the PUD process allows for that, and that's one major distinction between the two, and why this project, in consideration of wanting that mixed product, that duplex and those townhomes, is using the PUD process. The second portion of this question is, could property owners add accessory dwelling units? And George and Greg addressed this at a work session, that any of their additional additions, such as ADUs, they tend to be aligned with whatever the zoning code allowed. So the project could be done, and there are other improvements that homeowners will want to make, that they will need to follow both the zoning regulations and the building code. Denise, I don't know if you want to weigh in any more on that.
That pretty much, at the time that you're negotiating the HOA and the final platting on that is when I've seen in other areas in town where there have been restrictions on accessory structures that are used as dwellings. In this case, we would request that not be a restriction, and OBERER's fine with that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Denise. The next question is, what is the estimated price for duplexes? Well, at the work session, George and Greg announced that the pricing is still in that mid 200 range for those duplexes. And the duplex, that's for each side of the duplex. So if you're buying both sides, it would be considered two separate units. Is there a square footage minimum in the PUD and the RA? Short response is no, there is not a square foot minimum. And if you recall from the presentations of the product, that these are semi-custom products with 30 different floor plan options. And George, correct me if I get any of this wrong, with 120 different elevations. So there's a lot of combinations in there. And I could pull out my calculus skills and do a factorial calculation on that and tell you how many different combinations there are, but I think we'll get lost in the weeds. The short of it is that there's 30 different floor plans, and I understand that they can vary from 1,400 square feet to 3,000. And I don't know, George, you probably make something bigger than that. So that's the short answer to that. Should zoning change as a development is being built, how would that affect the PUD zoning, and how would it affect the RA zoning? I think this the PUD has to adhere to the zoning laws in place at the time of the PUD was approved. Regarding construction of homes, roads, this would not prevent a homeowner from later requesting to construct something that had subsequently been made permissible through a zoning change on their own property. I think this question particularly comes about that there's been a strong interest to change the zoning code. To quote Mary Ann McQueen, she said, liberate the zoning code. And there's some sections of the code that can be very restrictive. We also heard from several community members looking to address the redlining effects that have happened in communities throughout the country by zoning code. I think there are a lot of important issues there to address, and I'm sure that we will address in the future. But as it relates to the PUD has to meet whatever zoning code it is now under the rules that the PUD is approved. All right, now we have questions. These questions come up from other architects, and types of questions, they're things that we may not have answers to, and some of them are aesthetic questions about aesthetics. And I think we all know that we can't regulate what's pretty and what's ugly. I'm a proud owner of what was once considered the ugliest home in town. I put a little paint on it. I think I made it look better. So we can't regulate ugly. And that's really a matter of perspective. So I'll start addressing the stormwater questions. Has OBERER considered existing stormwater guidelines to plant vegetation, vegetative buffers and swells rather than curb and gutters? And has there been a cost study for a decision? The short answer is no, in the context of doing vegetative buffers and swells. The OBERER, the PUD application does not only meet stormwater regulations, but it exceeds them. And it exceeds them in two very tangible ways. The stormwater design for the whole development considers the units that are to be developed by the development team, but it also is considering the stormwater that is being directed to the site by the village. That's us. We have our previous members on the team, and I won't question their judgment on this, but they thought it would be a good idea to dig a hole and direct our stormwater into the property into a hole. Well, that creates a challenge for any future development. The development team is addressing that now and is taking care of that stormwater that's going on site. They're also designing and building stormwater management to deal with future development or future building on the 1.8 acres of donated land. So they're meeting all the stormwater regulations and exceeding them. Would OBERER consider making loop roads instead of each cul-de-sac and arranging lots to allow a view of the wetlands? The short answer is that there are limitations because of the infrastructure that's in place. If you've seen any of the maps that we presented on this on utility, the sanitary line is in the shape of an L and it runs just down the middle, South Gate, and then it cuts across over to Spillane. And that limits the design of the roads. And for those reasons, the main road through that development follows that sanitary line. George, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that. George, I think you're on mute. I see you speaking, but you're on mute. Okay, I think we're having some issues with George's mic.
There, I think I got it now.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, certainly the sanitary sewer line that's kind of an L-shaped, as you described, through the tract dictates at least those sections of road. In addition to that, the stub streets, both from the north and the east, also give us targets that we have to hit with the internal roadways. There's also some challenges with the soils conditions. So, we're trying to keep the infrastructure in the areas where there's shallow rock, at least in an elevation where we don't have to dig through rock, nor will the village later on have to maintain sewer lines that are into the rock. So those just attempt to deal with some of those environmental challenges that are on site now.
Thank you, George. And the next one is related to this loop roads conversation. Could the village require garage doors not face the street and require garages in the rear as they are shown in our zoning code graphics? So I think there's a combination of zoning. Denise, do you wanna add to this or provide a response?
Well, I mean, we don't regulate that, so that was what OBERER designed.
Yeah.
I know that in our zoning code, it just shows the example of a detached garage, but there's no detached garages in this plan that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. And typically we've seen the detached garages or rear entry garages used in situations where there might be rear alleyways or situations like that to deal with. And this proposed design in either zoning classification would not anticipate alleyways, nor would it anticipate the lot widths accommodating the driveways and such to get to the rear of the house for a rear entry garage.
All right. Okay, the next one, I'll read it as it is. Does OBERER understand that effectively nobody walks down 68? Pedestrian paths should be directed towards neighborhood streets that people actually use to bike and walk. I'll dispute that claim that nobody walks down 68 because one of the reasons we did that improvement to repave that area because there was a high use and high demand. But that aside, the village does not own the land to make the connection to the south side of Calypso. We will need to negotiate with the owner, but it's something that to be considered will connect to the sidewalks at the end of Calypso Grill. So in the drawings, there's that concept plan of connecting out to the bike lane on 68. There's another question that came in from the OBERER website, and it's a statement from the OBERER website that's being copied. At the website, it states, "We respect the splendor and vibrancy of the land, preserving and utilizing the natural beauty of the local landscape to build a brighter future. Can OBERER representatives explain how this plan does these things?" George, you want to take that, or Greg?
Greg, why don't you take that one? Well, I can take.
Sorry, I had to give him a co-host.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
There you go. Sorry about that. Was having trouble muting myself. So we do start early on in our land planning process with evaluating the resources and environmental features that can be preserved in the development process. And in this plan particularly, that biggest resource is the creek to the west side of the site that was identified early on And our plan not only protects a large majority, most of that, except the South Gate extension, which couldn't be avoided, but moves the housing significantly away from it in order to preserve the trees along that creek and provide a buffer from the homes to the creek. You notice most of our stormwater treatment areas are between the creek and the housing, enabling the stormwater to be treated and retained in those features. We are also adding to the environmental quality by turning what essentially right now is a cornfield into a partial constructed wetland. That has two benefits. A, it treats our stormwater, but B, it provides a naturalized area where currently is corn. We've also maintained tree lines along the south side of the site and are running our infrastructure along paths where infrastructure currently exists, most notably the existing sewer line through the site. So, obviously development does have some impact on the environment, but I think we've done a good job here of taking the environment into consideration when planning out our development.
Thank you, Greg. We're going to go through. We have received a lot of questions, and I'm sure that many of the folks here have their own questions, and we want to provide an opportunity to all citizens. And I want to respect the fact that these folks who submitted questions took the time to write them and send them to us. I also want to respect the fact that you are here. So we'll probably only get to maybe, I don't know, that's not even a half of the questions, and provide our responses, written responses to those, and transition over to asking questions from you all. So go to the next three questions. That is, what is the average lot size for each category of housing? George or Greg, do you want to take that on? I have the spec sheet here in front of me.
Greg, do you want to pick that one up, or?
Sure, just straight from memory, the single family homes tend to be about 70 foot wide and about 130 to 150 foot deep. The duplexes, houses, there are, duplex kind of goes over what's essentially two lots. So each lot is roughly, as I recall, about 60 foot wide with a duplex, on half a duplex on each side. So a whole total of 120 foot, if I remember right, the duplex lots. And that is the same for both duplex styles. Either it's 2-bedroom or the 3-bedroom, doesn't change in that. And then the townhomes, I do not know exactly the width of the lot. I do know that we are anticipating, they're about 130 foot deep. And then the townhouse, to do the math in my head, about 120 foot wide, I think, depending on if it's a 3-unit townhome or a 4-unit townhome. We just made sure that we had the proper side yard setbacks on the town, home product to meet that needs.
Okay, great. Then I'll get to next question is, we actually received a lot of questions on this. Is there a need for an HOA? The HOA is, some of the questions received along the lines that the HOAs are contrarian to village culture. I'll answer that in two ways. One, we do have other HOAs in the village. There are several examples we can pull from. The HOA being a necessity here is primarily the stormwater features, those detention ponds and the constructed wetland. Greg, is there anything you want to add to the need for the HOA on those particular items?
I just want to point out that, we typically do HOAs in all our communities. They are there for a couple purposes, primarily for community management of community-owned items, most notably here, the stormwater stuff and the entry features coming into the community. I know some of the objections have been to some of the restrictions that often get placed into covenants and restrictions under the PUD. We committed during the Plan Commission process to work with the village on, tweaking those to a way that'd be acceptable here in Yellow Springs. I'd like to note that under the RA zoning, we would continue to use a HOA even without a PUD. And in that instance, the village's participation in it would not be something that would be a part of the process. So I think an HOA is something that will come, and we've had some commitments under the PUD to work with the village staff and some people who might be appointed by council to make those appropriate for Yellow Springs.
Okay. In those pieces that, that folks have asked about, there are lawns, natural landscapes. I know there's been question about roosters. That's something that will get talked about, or chickens, clotheslines. I see Denise shaking her head. She, we were a little traumatized around roosters.
And it's not uncommon for HOA documents to restrict some of those things. I think that's one of the benefits of having the discussion and negotiating each one of those items. I, for one instance, live in an HOA community, and my yard is very naturalized. I have lots of wildflowers around all four sides of my home and in my backyard. So certainly we do not restrict against those types of landscapes. I don't think we have anything naturally against clotheslines. Roosters, honestly, we have restricted against those in the past, but we'd have to work with the village to see what was doable there.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. All right, we're going to open up to questions. Jessica, I saw that you had your hands up. I have S and L, I have Max, and I have Brooke. Those are the folks I have on my list so far. Now I see Dino. Raise his hand. All right. Lindsay. So I'm adding that to the stack. Matthew Kirk. Okay, Patrick Lake. Kelly. Jaime. Okay, all right, so SNL.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear
Okay.
us?
Yeah, this is Sharon and Lubanides, and we're on Southview, which is just off Spillane, around the corner.
All right, welcome, Sharon. How are you?
I'm good. I have one quick question. Will the single-family homes be built individually for each person who buys a home, or are they going to be built in groups like spec homes?
I can answer that, Greg, and Josue.
Please, George.
We're a semi-custom builder, and we do both. We prefer to pre-sell all of our homes, and we do a significant percentage of our production as a pre-sold home. But we also build a number of, call it speculative homes in the community. With our experience in Southwest Ohio, we know pretty much, in our market studies, we know pretty much what kinds of houses will sell. And so we will, in an attempt to help fill the more immediate needs, because some people just don't want to wait 9 months to build a house or whatever it takes today. So we'll try to keep a number of those houses available for the immediate market needs over the building process for the whole community. And it's also hard to sell two sides of a duplex. So typically we'll sell one side and build the other side speculatively.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, Jessica. Did we lose Jessica? Okay. Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. There you are. There you are.
Hi, thanks. Jessica Thomas with the Yellow Springs News. I just wanted to follow up on the affordable housing piece, actually. There have been some questions about affordable housing under a plan that is not the PUD. Is there any affordable housing option if the PUD is not approved?
Let me ask you for a clarification. Would your question about affordable housing options in the context of donated land and what would come about for a project?
Either donated land or like spec houses being built with the idea that they would be used for affordable housing.
Okay. Currently under the alternate plan or the RA plan that has been included in the packet, it does not have any set aside for affordable housing. So that hasn't been discussed or hasn't been negotiated to the extent that we have negotiated that in the PUD. So now I think you all know me enough that I'm not afraid of asking for money and asking for things that benefit us. So certainly we will try. That doesn't mean that OBERER development is under any obligation to provide us with anything. The project has to meet the zoning regulations, and that's all we could ask for. Hope that answers your question, Jessica. Okay, so now Max. Hey, Max, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Thank you, everybody. First, I want to say, I think that there's, as you know, I have a presentation that is in opposition to this PUD. There are many people on this call right now that want to hear that presentation. And so I'm going to start by asking anybody on this call, if you want to see that presentation, if you want me to take control of the screen, which I would ask you to allow me to do, I can show you that much of the information that's been provided is not accurate and that there is another way. Josue, I want to address you personally. I've enjoyed working with you very much, and your team, Denise, Johnny, everyone on your team is excellent, and I've enjoyed it very much. But I want to tell you, I'm very disappointed that this forum is yet another forum for a sales pitch for OBERER development. We had all the work sessions. We had previously, last year, we had the Planning Commission hearing. We had the first council meeting. We had a work session on Monday. Every single one of those, we've been just regurgitating the same information. Even though much requests for changes have come up, the developer hasn't changed their application one bit. You alluded to the fact that there's been misinformation put out there. I assume you mean people on the opposition side. I would like you to be specific. If you claim that there's misinformation, be very specific, because I can be specific about misinformation that you've provided. Specifically, before we explored this parallel plan, you said that without the PUD, we'd end up with somewhere like 300 homes. That's misinformation. You told me that, and you repeated it at the Planning Commission meeting or at the first Village Council meeting. Other misinformation. I will show you exactly where the dump was if you allow me to take control of the screen. Also, Brian, I would like to address you personally as well. The work session yesterday was presumably about exploring the parallel plan. Since the Planning Commission meeting in November, I've been asking for a parallel plan. I put forth the question, this is a vote for a PUD or against a PUD. Shouldn't we know what a no answer, a no on the PUD would result in? And you failed to demonstrate what that would be. And I'd like to show the people of Yellow Springs what that would look like. Brian, it was pretty insulting for people on the opposition side yesterday when you referred to OBERER development as our OBERER team. You're an elected official. You represent those who agree with you and those who don't agree with you. So they're not, if they're your team, I thought you were on my team. I thought you were on the citizens team. It betrayed a partisanship that's going on at the village that is not giving the opposition to this project a fair voice. So if folks would like to see my presentation, please let it be known. I will.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Max. There's Brooke, Dino, Lindsay ahead of you. Oh, sorry, or next to you. And while this forum isn't set up, there isn't necessarily,
I'm just like,
Max, you're unmuted, so. We didn't design this forum to have a review, a rebuttal to a presentation, particularly because what's before council is the PUD application. And the PUD application, they have three options. They can approve with modifications, and they can deny. The approve with modifications, the council can request things that are in the zoning regulations. That's the only things that they can request for. The second part to that is that the OBERER development team has to agree to those modifications. So the presenting on an alternative plan, it's unless the OBERER development team has an alternative plan to present that they're willing to consider, the council isn't deciding on an alternative plan. They got an application before them that they either have to approve with modifications, or deny. And so that's the difficult position I am, that to entertain an alternative proposal, that it's not possible unless the development team has an alternative proposal that they're willing to consider and present forward. So I'll go back to your statement about the disinformation about the 300 units. The 300 units, and actually that comment didn't start with me. We were able to trace it to where it came from, and it really came from what the zoning regulations allow, and particularly around the number of units per acre. So that 300 units is really a math number from that the zoning regulations were allowed up to 6 units per acre. Now that's the math calculation in our zoning code, but it doesn't take in consideration topography and other mitigating factors of a development, such as stormwater and setbacks. Denise, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but that's simply where that number comes from.
Well, that's not taking into consideration the requirements for open space. It's not taking into consideration the streets, which are going to take quite a bit of acreage as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you were just multiplying 52 acres by 6 and coming up with 300 and something.
Right.
Yeah.
The particular allegation about the dump site, I received a communication about someone recollecting that there were barrels being dumped in the site. The environmental study speaks to the infill at the site. There really is no, we don't have any records of there. So being a dump site, certainly not on any of our records. We looked at the YSI remediation documents. There's a ton of data from the remediation work that Yellow Springs Instrument had to do in that area. Greg, I don't know if you want to get into the environmental study, but we just.
Sure. So early on, before we acquired the site, we hired Cabane Environmental to do a environmental report on the entire project. We do that for every piece of property we acquire. I think in this case, it was very long and very detailed, a lot because of the information that they researched on the YSI groundwater, across the street. And there were wells that they were monitoring wells, against the stream. And our environmental consultant pulled reports from the information on those things and found out that, the environmental condition did not exist on this particular piece of property. Also found those wells are currently below, they're at residential acceptable levels for development. We have done soil borings throughout the site, found some areas of shallow rock through those borings, found some areas of loose fill from those borings, but did not find any buried barrels or sorts of trash or anything like that during the borings of the site. And it would have been hard to miss as many borings as we did. All those reports have been provided to the village. So there's nothing we're trying to hide as far as environmental condition on that site.
And Greg, don't forget that there was a significant trunk sewer line that goes north and south and east and west through that site. And I find it difficult to believe that sewer excavation would not have encountered any kind of trash or barrels for that matter.
All right, thank you both. And Max, I appreciate what you do and I appreciate your work. And I've had the pleasure of working with you on several projects, and I hope that we can continue a very fruitful professional relationship as we have. All right, next on the list is Brooke. Brooke, are you able to unmute?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that. I have a question, and this may have been discussed. I've been I've not been informed in regards to this. I've just been attending the meetings, and I have a house that's actually going to be deeply affected by this whole development. And I have a question in regards to the road that's going to be developed. Our fence is literally on the road. So, and then also other people's fence lines are also going to be up against the new properties. What's going to happen to the current properties that residents currently hold?
I would like to say that, we'll obviously help protect individual property rights. So if your property is affected, we'll certainly look to that. From our conversation with the development team is that they're working on what property is theirs. So if I understand correctly, your fence will be affected, and
Absolutely. I feel like my property exclusively is going to be deeply affected by this development.
You mentioned the fence. You're talking
yes,
about the fence.
And then the affordable housing is going to be right up against our property as well. So I was wondering, what's going to happen to our fence, because our back fence has already been damaged by somebody that's been mowing the grass in the backfield. So, I mean, we're already experiencing things like that.
Brooke, this is George Ober. Is your fence on your property?
Yeah, our fence has always been here. It's been here since we moved in.
Well, but so we would have no reason, desire, or need to come onto your property and affect your fence or your property. It's
the
just
way
not
that
something.
the road is, though, it comes right up against our fence. It's gonna go through our fence line the way that it looks.
Your fence line is probably currently in the right of way. And if that is the case, then it may need to be relocated back to your property.
Okay, are you going to pay for that then? Or, you can't just come and take our fence away, can you?
Well, if it's in the right of way, it's not actually on your property. But we usually work.
There's no road there right now. It's been here since we've moved in.
I understand that, and its previous owner probably put it there. But if it was built off your property onto somebody else's property, then it's not technically your fence. But we usually do work with neighbors on those relocations. And
you really should.
Excuse me?
You should, because our back fence line will be affected as well.
No, we have no dispute with that, Brooke. We just, we don't know exactly what the situation is. We're assuming that it might be in the right of way. And part of that property before we purchased it was already platted. And the right of ways and easements had already been created before we purchased the property. So, I'm not knowledgeable.
Not to mention that the road's going to be going right through our backyard.
The road's going to go either on our property or on existing right of way. We're not putting any roads on anybody else's property.
It looks like it in regards to the plan, and there's been little communication with current neighbors in regards to this development.
Okay.
Well, Brooke, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to meet with you and get a surveyor to show you where the property corners are. But we have no intention of impacting anybody else's what they own. Now, there are many cases where people think they own stuff that they don't truly own. I don't know the instance here, so we'll have to have the surveyor come and identify where those property corners are and where the street's going to go for you. And I'll show that to you on your out there in the yards, and so you can see clearly what is going in where, and that'll help clear that up, I hope.
Yeah, and not to mention that current residents are going to be looking at other people's back windows or whatever. I'm not really sure what the view is going to look like, but we look out at a very nice view right now. And now we're going to be looking at somebody else's back window. So
Brooke,
not really
yeah.
sure how everybody feels about that.
And Brooke, we'll follow up with you on that property line issue. And in terms of the view behind your property, and that's the area that's donated land for affordable housing, I'm not sure what that's going to look like. After we get through this process, we're going to develop some concepts for what an affordable housing project could look like and what will be potential funding sources for that. So that's going to be that's going to be a process in and of itself. And we'll connect with you as that work is underway, if it ever does get underway. So thank you, Brooke. All right, Dino. Welcome, Dino. Are you able to unmute? All right, there you go.
Thank you, Josue. I've got a statement and a couple of questions that we'll go over here, and it's probably more directed at administration and council than more directed at OBERER. What I'm looking at, the OBERER request for a PUD at this point should be denied for the following reasons. As Councilperson Krieger so aptly asked at the work session regarding apartment complexes, OBERER specifically stated Monday that building 12 to 20 unit apartments is not in their sweet spot. It's not cost effective. And the bottom line, it just doesn't make money for them. So having said that, and seeing that council has purchased a 16 unit loss in place is a little bit interesting, especially when the experts from OBERER just stated that that's not a cost effective measure unless you're going to build big, 100 units, roughly 100 units or more. We get that. So my question to you guys is, why don't we go big and use that 10-acre existing PUD, and instead of laying over another PUD, just build a large-scale complex on that land? Affordable housing doesn't necessarily mean affordable homes. I mean, I want to be clear about that. Affordable housing does not necessarily mean affordable homes. The proposed PUD that OBERER is offering is anything but affordable. Just because you're getting mixed use housing doesn't make it affordable. Doesn't mean it's affordable either. And by the numbers they shared on Monday with us, all the products they're offering isn't in the affordable category. I mean, as you stated, a duplex has the minimum of the duplex was $250,000 to $350,000 per half. That's per half. Is that affordable? That's something you guys have to answer. We have always struggled and have yet to provide an adequate solution to the affordable question for the last 24 years that I've been here. The resistance to building large-scale apartment complexes is just perplexing, to say the least. Apartment complexes are built all over the state, all over the country. I don't understand the resistance to this particular product. It hits every issue you guys are asking for in affordability, to provide living spaces for people who can't afford to purchase a home. It's a logical step, Josue, and it needs to be looked at and acted upon to fill your affordability goals. Lastly, and you can answer questions after that. You can keep on equating affordable housing to mean affordable homes, but that's not the case in this OBERER project. And granting them PUD with respect to affordability isn't doing it. That's all I've got. I look forward to your responses. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dino. You present a lot of interesting points, and we know some of the history. We do know that we need large scale to have a meaningful impact on affordable housing. And affordable housing isn't just home ownership, but it's rental. It's a lot of things, and there has been a lot of opposition to that. And I think folks are coming at it from different perspective. And I don't know the right answer to that, because I don't know what's gonna help us get there. I don't. I think that's clearly a challenge that we need to face as a community, and not an easy challenge to face. I respond to that because that's my piece to respond. I think the other things that you bring up, why not build a large apartment complex on the what's already designated as the PUD, if I understood that correctly. So George, I don't know if you want to take that. I think
take
you
that,
provided a
if you don't mind.
response. Okay,
Go ahead, Greg.
We didn't come to Yellow Springs with the intention to solve the affordable housing problem. We came to Yellow Springs with the intention of building a semi-custom market rate housing development. The village staff is the ones who encouraged us to participate to help resolve the affordable housing concerns of the village as a whole. And out of interest in helping the village in that challenge, we've committed to donating the land, the 1.75 acres. But we've also committed to, 4 different products, 2 different townhomes, two different duplexes, the townhomes, and the single family, to try to provide a diverse set of housing opportunities. But it was our proposal, wasn't really an attempt to solve all affordable housing needs in Yellow Springs. Our proposal was an attempt to provide a variety of market rate housing and then to contribute towards the village's goal in that effort.
Thank you, Greg. Dino, that might not be the answer you were looking for, but it's a difficult one to answer. All right, I have next on my list is Lindsay. Lindsay, are you able to unmute?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome.
Thank you. What I wanted to say to council, to the council members who are here and listening, is that if our choice is to approve with modifications, or deny, and that's what you're asking of your citizenry, I'm asking that you deny this PUD on account that it does not meet the requirements. It is not meeting the needs of existing villagers. There is due diligence that needs to be done as far as environmental impact and a legitimate traffic study and a study of how this is going to impact existing residents, how it's going to impact the neighborhood right behind it. As you're hearing, there are a lot of things and voices and information that I think have been left out here. You need time to hear from your citizens. You need time to hear from studies that you haven't seen, haven't taken into consideration. And this time was supposed to be for us to do that. There should definitely be time for us to do that. Don't rush through this decision. Do your due diligence, be on our side, the citizens' side. This is what we're asking of you. OBERER has stated, even in this meeting, even in just their last statement, that they're not here for us. They're here for them. We're asking you to be here for us because it's us that you're here for. You're why you're in your positions. We're the reason you're in that position. So we're asking you to be on our, not OBERER's team. Hear us out, listen to us, and take into consideration the information that you're getting. And I'm asking to hear. A lot of people put work into the presentation that Max has to give tonight. A lot of us have been concerned coming to these meetings, speaking our voices, doing our research, and we've put it together and been talking to each other like a community is supposed to. And we're asking that you hear our voices. So I'm asking that you give that time to Max Crum. Thank you.
Lindsay, this is George Ober. One of the things I think we lose sight of is the fact that this property has been zoned for residential purposes since the 1970s. And a lot of you and your neighbors have purchased the properties surrounding it well after it was already zoned. So, probably what should have happened is if everybody against it being built as a residential development, the neighbors should have come to the community and said, let's rezone this property for whatever you think it should be zoned for. But that's not what happened. And so we purchased it with an existing use. And I think it's unfair to challenge the staff or the city council to say, you can't build on this property what it is now zoned for, because that's just not appropriate. And we're just doing what we're allowed to do by the current zoning.
With all due respect, I came to speak to my government. You've had plenty of time to speak. I came to speak to my government and talk to them. And yes, people have been speaking about this. I think even earlier in this meeting, Josue admitted that our zoning code does need to be looked at. Even Mary Mann McQueen, who I disagree with often, we agree on this. Our zoning code needs to be liberated because things like this, issues like this, and we're here now and we're speaking up and we don't want to be silenced in our own town hall meeting. Thank you very much.
Lizzie, thank you. I appreciate your input and thank you. I'll certainly consider. I hope that you understand the limitations that we have. We have the PUD process and we have the zoning regulations that would allow a single family RA development. I think even in that there is an option that doesn't get approved, but that's going to be a very expensive and I'm certainly not, actually, I don't think that we would win if contested. So I think that we have limitations and we're working with what we have. Matthew Kurt. Matthew, before you unmute, I see that some folks have changed their names around and don't match up with my list. And as I stated when Max was speaking, if someone wants to yield their time, while we don't have a process for that, and I've been encouraged to avoid doing that, I will consider the request for the yield. So.
Josue, you ready?
Yes. How are you?
All right. Well, I guess my concerns are a little bit different. My concerns revolve largely around the need for family housing in the village. I think we're all aware that the demographic trends in the village over the last several decades have been that we've gotten older. At this point, I think our average age is 10 years over the statewide average, and Ohio's not a young state. And in Yellow Springs in particular, the percentage of our population over 60 is quite high. And so I look at a project like this and I see it as an opportunity. And, it's an opportunity to add family housing. And, I didn't know based on housing type, who favored what kind of housing or whatever. And so I took to the internet like most people, right? And I happened to come across this report, the 2021 Home Buyers and Sellers Generational Trends Report, put together by the National Association of Realtors. And it's a 144-page report. So I'm happy to share the link if you're really hankering for a good read, maybe before bedtime. I can help you out. But more or less what it came down to is that families in the age range of what you would call, or people in the age range of what you would consider to be people that have families account for roughly 37% of the purchases of new single-family homes. And let's be clear, single-family homes are far and away the most popular property type that people are looking for. Over 80% in every age range is looking for a single-family home. Only honestly, when you get into the older age ranges, do the numbers of people who want things like duplexes move off the 1 or 2% line. And they go up to like 8% and 11%. And so my concern with this project is that if we just did it as a straight single family development, based on, these averages, we'd end up with 52 single family homes that were occupied by families. And we'd end up with 88 single family homes that were occupied by people over 50. Versus the project that we're looking at in the PUD, where we're reducing our number of single family homes, which again is the most popular home type, down to 64 homes, right? So based on that 37% number, we're going to only end up with 24 out of the total 140 homes being available or being likely purchased by families. The remainder of the homes are not going to be families. In fact, you're going to end up with 92 homes between the remainder of the single family homes that will go to people over 50, and likely the lion's share of the doubles, which are going to be like 52 units between the 3-bedroom and the 2-bedroom units, as those units are like in the 1 and 2% level for everybody like under 50. So the reality is this project shifts our housing stock towards where we already have a really strong population of seniors and empty nesters. And those people are still going to be able to buy in, even if we did a single family home development. It's not like they would be excluded. But by moving to this product where it's not appealing to families for such a large percentage of the project, we're really excluding families from joining the community. So, I mean, 52 homes under the single family plan would be 37% of the project versus 24 homes under the PUD would be 17%. So you see the PUD is making us older, actually less diverse versus a traditional single family home development. You know, one thing I've heard be said, well, you know, it's okay if seniors move to the new development because, well, that'll allow families to move into their developments. The reality is, and I live right next to Birch 3, I haven't seen every single transaction, but the vast majority of transactions have been from people that did not live in the community. The reality is most people that live in Yellow Springs, it's like everywhere, you know, you get settled, you get comfortable. Who wants to move? That's a big burden. So you don't really see that much of people like moving, you know, into these new developments. But even if you did, I mean, really what you're trying to push when you say that, it's like a theory of like trickle down economics, but trickle down housing, right? We'll build the housing for the seniors and they'll move in there and then the families will get their houses. You know, why not just build the housing for the families out of the gate? And I guess my question to the developers is, do you think that the PUD is the most family-friendly plan you could come up with for this site if the goal of the village was to encourage families to move to Yellow Springs? That's what you do best, I feel like. You guys build places families want to live. I'm done.
Matthew, I think you have a lot of good information there. I will welcome receiving it, and probably council members would appreciate receiving it as well. I think that there's some formulas there that, you know, it's based on some assumptions, right? That among your points is that families will not be attracted to the duplexes or the townhomes. And I personally, I'm not an expert on the trends that you reference, but I have done housing development in the past with Community Preservation and Development Corporation, and there are families that are attracted to the duplex and the townhome models because of the price point range that they offer. And you know, there are families that do live in 2 bedrooms. I tell you that there was a time in my life, and maybe I'm talking too much about my history, but there was a time that my family, my mom and my sisters, we lived in a 1 bedroom until my mom was able to afford to get something else. So I think that what we were hoping to accomplish is that a mixed product could be attractive to a broader range of income groups. And there are different family dynamics within those different income groups. So I think it's one of those things that, yes, your information might be true in some cases, but there would also be families that would benefit from a townhome and a duplex product. George and OBERER, I don't know if you have any.
I can add a little bit. One of the questions we often get asked that's hard to answer directly is, you know, who our customers are going to be. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we'll follow fair housing and take whichever customers come to us. But that being said, we do a market study when we start with these developments. And our market studies usually identify a primary market area, which typically tends to be, you know, the area within a couple miles of the development as our primary market area. So I don't know what you've experienced in some of your other neighborhoods, but I would expect we would, you know, market ourselves highly to the existing residents in and around Yellow Springs. We would also expect that most of our customers who come from outside of the village would have a reason to live in the village. You know, either they have kids to go to the schools, they have jobs in or near the village, or they have family or friends who currently are from the village. Most people don't choose a town to live in just by randomly looking at a map. Maybe some do, but for the most part, people pick their neighborhoods first and then the developer or house builder second. And that's actually how we choose places to build. We look for communities where people want to live, and we think Yellow Springs is one of those communities that people actually want to live. And as such, it is a desirable place for us to build housing, a single family, duplex, and the townhomes. I think Josue's right. I think your statistics are probably accurate in that most of the, the duplexes may attract smaller families or empty nesters, but they will open up existing homes in and around the community. And the inclusion of the duplexes was specifically an attempt to create some variety of price points in and around the community. We originally came to Yellow Springs with an all single family plan, and that had all price points, it ended above the 350 range, I would say. So by providing the duplexes, we were able to diversify the price points pretty significantly in the development.
Well, in addition to that, the duplexes do serve a portion of your citizenry that is looking for a more maintenance-free product. And unfortunately, a lot of the housing stock in Yellow Springs, because there has been no development in Yellow Springs for many years to speak of, has resulted in a lot of seniors living in older homes that are pretty burdensome as far as maintaining them. And so this offers an opportunity for them to stay in Yellow Springs with a more maintenance-free product and a single-story product.
Thank you, Matthew. All right, next is Patrick Lake. Welcome, Patrick.
Hey, Josue, how are you doing?
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Yep, of course, I'm all right. Okay, so first I want to say I appreciate all the hard work that you and the village staff have put in. I know that has taken an enormous amount of time to go through. I appreciate the good works that you do. I also want to point out it is possible to pour an enormous amount of good work into a bad project. And at some point in time, it's okay to acknowledge that there may have been good work that are wasted. So I don't want to think that just because we endeavor with efforts and good works that we're committed to that project because we've made that investment. We have to be willing to walk away from things, right? Okay, so I also want to say I am pro-growth in Yellow Springs. I am anti-PUD. I am against this PUD strongly. A couple of things in Greg's presentation during the work session on Monday, it was one of his pride points to talk about the safety of the development that they were building. Wide streets, they were going to feature wide streets, wide sidewalks on both sides of the street, and that was going to ensure that those neighborhoods were going to be safe to drive through, safe to walk through, and safe way to integrate into part of the community. And while I appreciate Mary Ann's efforts of riding her bike down to the site and taking a look, I don't agree with her judgments or the assumptions of the traffic study that traffic will not proceed north on Spillane. I believe that something like 40% of the traffic in the development will naturally start to use Spillane as a natural way of entering into town because that's what villagers do. They use all points of entry and exit into a community depending on where they are, where they're going, who they're with, and so on. So the notion that we could just assume that no traffic will go on Spillane and that we're good with Spillane with no sidewalks on either side of the street and a relatively narrow road is a bad assumption. And I've asked in December that we need to look at what the costs are of widening Spillane. What's the process? Because all of the property owners along Spillane are going to have to give up some of their property. There currently is just ditches on both sides of the street, so we'll have to do significant work to tie that into our storm and sewer system. We'll have to put sidewalks over that. That all is going to cost some amount of money. And in December, I asked for you to present to us what that cost would be. And I also asked for you to provide us with a cost-benefit analysis. And council reinforced that request, asking for you to present to the community numbers. And I appreciate your general assertions that portray confidence that we've got the capacity and all things are good. I want you to show me, and I want you to show the rest of the villagers with numbers. Present the numbers to the community. You can stand by them if they exist, and you can present them to us. And we can all look at them and agree or disagree, but we need to see the numbers. Okay, on the affordable housing piece, as a part of Greg's presentation, he showed us the area that looks, he called troublesome soil, hydrostatic soil. That is also coincidentally the 1.75 acres that they're donating to us for affordable housing. So when this was presented to the community, there was a statement that there will be at least 20 affordable housing units that will be possible on this 1.75 acres. I'd like to know, where does that number come from? If that number came from, let's say, Home Inc., I'd like to know, how did that communication occur? If Marianne McQueen was a part of the meetings, including Home Inc., and what housing could be provided, I believe that she should probably recuse herself from the proceedings and decisions on this process due to her historical relationship with Home Inc. In fact, she's still listed as the executive director of Home Inc. on her LinkedIn profile. I'd like to know how do we know that we can even build on this 1.8 acres? OBERER has looked at it and decided it's scrap land. They don't need to worry about the challenge of building on hydrostatic soil. I don't think it's very easy to do. I don't think it's cheap to do. And coming up with a statement of affordable housing on challenging land is a troublesome assertion to make. So the notion of approving the PUD was based off of the great deal that the village was getting, all that OBERER was bringing to the community. They're donating land for affordable housing. They're donating land. They're going to build a park also on troublesome land. It's also coincidental that most of the donations that they're providing for green space and open space are in areas that they deemed troublesome. So we're getting scraps and we're getting a diversity of products which really aren't fitting the community, and that's touted as a win for the PUD. And it's been almost presented in a threatening way. Certainly the very first presentation when OBERER presented at Village Council, they said, we're going to do this whether we're going to build here, whether you pass this or not, which is not, that doesn't sound like a very welcoming way to introduce yourself to the community. Okay, this is a threat then. So I'd like some specificity with the threat, right? What would it look like if they didn't get the PUD and they had to go through the grueling process of rezoning each of the parcels in a way that fit their plan, and the community got to weigh in all of that process? If it doesn't pass, what does that plan look like? And Max Chrome has laid out some questions. In fact, during the work session, Monday was supposed to be, we're going to lay out the plan, and they presented an illegible plan. You couldn't read it. There was no specificity, no numbers. And the village council said, okay, well, we looked at that illegible plan, and we said roughly it's valid in terms of our zoning code. But I mean, come on, we've got to do better with more specificity. So I think we need to look at, what does current zoning actually permit? What could we extract from a plan that fits our community using current zoning? And why? Why are we so committed to give a shortcut to OBERER when we're getting scraps? Those are my questions for now. Thank you so much, Josue. Thank you all, village staff.
Josue, can I answer the soil question issue?
Sure. Let me just go through the list of things first, because Patrick had a lot. There's the Patrick, and let me know if I miss anything. I've got the cost of crosswalks and sidewalks. That's something that we're going to look at. What would it cost to put sidewalks in along Spillane all the way from Hyde to Allen Street? And we have the public right of way. I think there's going to be working with residents and the neighbors to accomplish that. I got the cost benefit analysis that you want to see the numbers. I'll follow up with you about what specific cost benefit analysis, because we talked about the utilities, police resources and other resources. And I'll follow up with you. I've got the soil issues for the 1.8 acres. And Greg, if you can touch base on that. There, you got a request for recusal of Marianne if Home Inc. was somehow involved in constructing or creating that 1.8 acres. I'll be clear about that, because we've been very diligent on ensuring that we are going above and beyond meeting our code of ethics on this. Home Inc. has not been part of the negotiations, has not been a party to this negotiations. So there's that.
I
Now,
can speak to that, Josue.
yes,
That number came from me. And that is from the zoning code. The underlying zoning for this is RC, which allows up to 14 units per acre. And the code allows anything over 1 acre rolls up to the next highest number. So if it's 1.2 acres, it can have 28 units. If it's 1.8 acres, it can have 28 units. It just becomes whether or not they just have to meet the setback requirements for RC as well as the lot coverage requirements. And so that's where that number came from. It didn't come from Home Week. So I just want to clarify that.
Okay, thank you, Denise. All right, Greg.
Soil question is actually a pretty good one. You'd have to look at a more detailed soil study, but the soil on the 1.7 acres, I'm actually not aware of any problems there, but right adjacent to it, directly to the west, that's where the fill issue is. It is on the area that the extension south on Southgate, and then in the area immediately west of that extension south, like Southgate. So the area we're retaining, it is about a 4-foot condition. And as such, we are mitigating the area underneath Southgate. You know, we'll excavate that 4 foot of soil and put down a compacted quality clay underneath the extension of Southgate. And then the homes to the west of that will be built on basements. You know, basements will be deeper than the 4 foot, so they will be foundations below that soil condition. So we are not sticking the village with soil condition land. In fact, we're building on it, but we will be mitigating it in the effort as that process. The parks location actually was a cooperative effort with the village staff and council members, in that we wanted to provide a location for the park that not only was our park, but was the neighborhood's park as a whole. So rather than centering it in our development, we centered it in the neighborhood as a whole by pushing it to the north of our development. It just seemed like the logical place to put it, based on it had a nice creek on a couple sides, and that it would serve more than just us, but the neighborhood to the north. That was also part of the donation to the village, the idea that we're not just building a playground, you know, for OBERER's new development, but a playground that sure our residents could use, but so could the existing residents in and around the community.
Hey, I want to jump in real quick because this seems like a good opportunity to clarify the misinformation about like dumping a bunch of waste in the creek, because that has popped up. So I guess I'd like, you know, Greg or George or Josue or Johnny to speak to that, because, you know, I mean, we're getting barraged with bats and all kinds of other stuff, but that's one I think that's easy to resolve.
Sure, it's real easy to dispute. You know, there is a creek that comes along that property, and we were aware of it early on. The Southgate extension, by moving Southgate Avenue, continuing south, does require a very minor impact to part of that creek. And we were very quick to go through the process with the U.S. Corps of Engineers to have that impact permitted. We are not dumping anything into the creek. We are extending Southgate Avenue south and have a permit to do that with the U.S. Corps of Engineers. Every other bit of that creek is being protected. And in fact, we are doing additional stormwater and water quality measures in the ponds and on the constructed wetland that goes above and beyond what those water quality requirements typically are. And that is an effort to preserve the creek and to limit our impact on it through the course of our development.
Hey, Greg, I think you should also talk about the fact that the developments to the north were developed prior to there ever being any EPA stormwater requirements in place. Therefore, they don't treat nor detain their water. And so we are actually over detaining on our property to compensate for what didn't happen to the north of us in the earlier development.
Correct. They predated those regulations and requirements.
Okay.
So our storm water detention facility will be essentially 40% larger than it needs to be to accommodate taking care of that additional stormwater.
Thank you, folks. I'm getting some messages that I'm not doing such a good job on the timekeeping. So I'm going to do a little better to get us moving, because there are a lot of folks looking to speak. So Kelly, and I'll adhere to the 3-minute rule that we initially set. Kelly, are you able to unmute?
I am. Hi, how are you?
Oh, well, welcome.
Thanks. First off, I wanted to echo some other people's sentiments and that I am pretty dismayed that this isn't really a true town hall where our village representatives listen and give thought to even dissenting opinions. At least I'm not really getting that feeling without sort of an immediate argumentative attitude talking about people barraging is not really a way to talk about the citizens that you are representing. And, they're doing their job as citizens and bringing things up, and a response, it shouldn't be insulting and sounds like we're bothering you. But I should not have to cede my time or voice to hear what another community member has to say. I would like Max to have additional time, but I'd also like to hear what happens, like the process, if we actually do reject the PUD. So not just the, what the community would look like from OBERER's, which we still really have not, pinned down, but I'd also like to hear what the process is if the council does not accept the PUD. What are next steps? Then let's say, if you could walk me through that process, I think it would be very helpful.
Absolutely. First, let me start off with, if I said that word, I apologize. I did not mean to insult.
It wasn't you this way.
Being a member of our community, I think, that's not me. So on your question about what happens, what happens after, if council denies the PUD, the development team, and my conversations with the development team is that they've prepared a plan for residential, single family RA site plan and a development project that meets zoning regulations. So they would immediately turn around and submit an application for a major subdivision. The process for that is we will need to have 20-day notice to the community. And so we will publish 20 days ahead of any public hearing for Planning Commission. So that will be the process for that. And Planning Commission will decide to approve or deny a single family development that conforms to the zoning regulations for RA. So that's the short answer. Obviously, there'll be questions that Planning Commission will have on that. I want to give others an opportunity to speak. I can follow up with more details on what that will look like from an administrative process and not necessarily details of particular site plan, housing. Obviously, housing products are going to be single family because it would have to meet the zoning code. And as long as they meet the zoning code and the setback requirements, that project's pretty straightforward. Thank you, Kelly. And again, apologize if I insulted you. Jaime. Jaime,
yes,
am I saying your name correctly?
No, you're not.
Sorry,
My name's Jamie.
Jamie.
My name's Jamie Adolph.
Welcome, Jamie. Apologize for
residents here.
Name.
Just real quick, I want to yield all my time to Max Chrome. It is a shame and a real knock on the democratic process that he wasn't allowed to give his presentation. I'm not really sure why that is. I just have two quick things to say. One, we are people in this town. We are not a product. We've been referred to as a product by both OBERER, which I would expect, but by our own government, that is sad indeed. I'd also at some point like George OBERER to give an apology to Lindsey Burke. I think he got confused and thought that perhaps this was a Trump fundraiser that he's usually used to be a part of and not a Democratic town hall meeting where he was trying to stifle being able to question our government officials. And this would be more of what you would see with OBERER as they come into communities, leaving a wake of destruction and lawsuits. So I would like to yield the rest of my time to Max Chrome. Please, be democratic and let him speak now. Thank you.
Max, where are you? I got about 2 minutes left on the clock here from Jamie. Max, presentation, is that you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. There's a
Sorry,
significant echo.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, guys, look, why can't we run a little longer? I've got very important information, very relevant, that I think a lot of people clearly want to hear.
And Max, I offered early on when Brooke, Dino, and others said, hey, if their folks will yield their time, that's something we don't do. But I said it from the beginning that we could.
Great,
we could
good.
do that.
Thank you. Then let me have my time. So what I'd like to do is do my presentation. I'd like you to allow me to share my screen, please.
I can't give you the 50 minutes. I got all these hands up.
I need to share my screen to make my point. It doesn't matter whether I have 15 minutes or 2 minutes. I need to share my screen to make my point. I think it seems like the village has closed ranks because they don't want to see what the actual parallel plan really would look like.
No,
what was presented is not buildable.
You have access to share your screen. I'm trying to be respectful to everyone here. This is not a closing rank. I don't know what you're getting at, but you're able to share your screen.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to be as quick as I can, guys. You see the purple PUD that
yes.
In this area? Okay. The area that's outlined in blue is the land in question. There's been misinformation provided by our government that the underlying zoning is all RA and that the developer would provide an RA development if this was denied. That's not true. Much of the underlying development is RA, but this portion that I've shown in striped orange is not. You can see the natural zoning of it is RC, high density residential. That's the natural zoning that would follow the natural curve. For some reason, our government doesn't want the people to understand that. And I'm thankful that I finally have an opportunity to point this out. I'm going to go to a satellite view. This is the satellite view of the property. The area that I'm talking about, striped in orange, is not RA. Jose, is that true? Josue, is that true?
There's 10 acres that are currently designated as PUD per ordinance in 1977.
Great.
Now,
why was that never pointed out to the Planning Commission? Why was it never pointed out to the Village Council?
Because this development is less dense than what that ordinance from the 70s would allow.
Okay, but it's been said that you've been working with this developer to increase density, to provide housing types. What's the point of having duplexes and townhomes if they're not affordable? There's no point in it. Who cares what shape they put the houses into if they're not affordable? This whole process has been a process of affordability washing. The area shown in the yellow stripes is actually currently zoned RC, as is the outlined area, the big field that is also zoned RC. It's zoned RC because it was recently annexed, and our ordinance calls for newly annexed land to be zoned RC. However, I'm sorry, RA. Thank you, gang. Thank you. So it is currently zoned that. However, if we, George himself said, if the neighbors didn't want this to be developed like this, they should have zoned it differently. Well, we still can do that by the process of the referendum. That hasn't really been discussed either. So I think it's highly justifiable for a community to evaluate newly annexed land and discuss it as a community, what it should be zoned for. The PUD zoning is clearly obsolete. It's an obsolete zoning plan. Now, here's what was presented as the so-called parallel plan. Josue, can you read this?
I can see the general outline. I think I have.
It's very difficult to read.
I have a better image if you want me to share that.
No, I did the work myself. I made a better image. It took me less than 5 minutes to do this and make it so that it was legible. Now, this is the area in question. Suppose the PUD does not pass. sure, they could develop the rest of that land as RA. There's no question about that. I'm not disputing that. What I dispute is the area in orange is not RA. That, as I described earlier, is naturally high density. That's natural. That's the natural zoning that if we were going to sit down, if there was no OBERER development proposed right now, we're going to sit down. Let's talk about how to rezone this obsolete zoning. It wouldn't be RA. It'd be RC or it'd be B. That's just a fast glance at the zoning map will tell you that. Now, this is what OBERER has proposed, the PUD. And since November 9th, we've brought up many, many questions. Marianne had great questions about, well, can you do apartments? And people, does it have to be configured like this? Tons of questions, 2 months. And at the Monday work session, what was submitted was nothing new. Brian said, we're still in an information gathering phase, which I found interesting because there was actually no new information presented, not a single bit of new information. It's the exact same application. So what would it look like if that was zoned differently? Well, that could be apartment buildings. It could be mixed use. I don't know. Shouldn't the community have the opportunity to discuss it? Of course we should. So I'm about to get to the good part. I only need another minute or two. A lot of these, I'm gonna be going quickly because most of these were already asked. Josue, has anybody performed any due diligence on the affordable housing piece?
What kind of due diligence are you asking? We looked at the soil, we looked at funding
Has an affordable housing firm been engaged to evaluate the site or had preliminary discussions with either OBERER or the village?
We have not done site planning on it. We have had our own team.
That's not my question. My question is
no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is this PUD a done deal?
No.
Thank you.
I don't have a crystal ball to predict what council is going to do.
Okay, so now, do you agree that the parallel plan was not adequately discussed at the Monday work session? It really wasn't discussed. There was no discussion of the underlying zoning. There was no evaluation of the layout. There was absolutely no discussion of it, whatever. When will we have an opportunity to actually discuss that in a public forum? You don't have
Are you looking for a response?
Yeah.
Okay, and the short answer is that this is a PUD application. So what council has before them is the PUD application. It's the application itself. They're not choosing between an alternative plan or the PUD.
They're choosing between a yes or a no or a modify.
They're using approve with modifications and deny, correct?
Right. So shouldn't they be educated about what deny means? Shouldn't they also be provided information about what the deny means? They've only been provided information about what approval means. The partisan activity at the village is completely discounting that possibility, even though the vast majority of people who have spoken in all these public hearings are opposed. There's been some support, but the vast majority is opposed. It's your job to listen to us, get those counselors the information that they need.
And we're doing that. We've done our work to provide them as much as information as we can on what they requested. A good example of the environmental, the traffic study, and the alternate plan.
Okay. Now, you had previously said that you would provide a cost-benefit analysis that compared the tax advantages, like the increased base, et cetera, with the increased costs. Like it's been said over and over again, oh, we're not really incurring any costs. That's not true. We get 130 new homes. There's 130 new homes worth of additional expenses. We've got the pool, we've got police, we've got sewer systems. All that stuff needs maintenance. For every single resident added, certainly there's some cost added. So we should be allowed to understand that. We should be allowed to understand what the tax benefit is of increasing our population by this much. So, I know Brian is pushing to have a first reading of this ordinance next Tuesday, but how can you vote on that without the cost analysis in place?
Yeah, and that's something I'll commit to getting the numbers from the annexation that we put together. We'll update that with the information.
Well, that would be great, but it's too late for that information to be appropriately disseminated and have a vote on Tuesday.
Well, there's two votes. Remember that the council doesn't have to have a vote on the first reading. It's the second reading where the vote.
Well, I don't think, why would you even do the first reading when you don't have that information? So the approval of the PUD is contingent on, quote, preservation of a significant natural feature. The significant natural feature that is that this PUD approval relies on is that stream. Now, I grew up on that stream. Many of you know the old Chrome place, we didn't call it unnamed tributary. We called it the creek behind Max's house. JB and I used to race our little wooden boats down that stream. I've crossed that stream hundreds of times. If anybody wants a little more information about that stream, by all means, come and talk to me. So I was really shocked that the village accepted OBERER's assertion that they're preserving that stream when really they're just not doing anything to it. Oh, well, it's actually not entirely true. They are doing something to a part of it. They're dumping they applied to dump dredge into the stream. So, but does that satisfy preservation of a significant natural feature to you? It doesn't to me.
Okay.
It doesn't constitute preservation of a significant natural feature. Okay. And if your guys, and I asked for an environmental study, I asked for backup for that. They asserted that they were going to preserve this stream. I asked for backup for it. What they provided us was a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers that basically said, yeah, it's okay for you to, have fill in this stream. It wasn't like, yeah, it's okay to preserve it. They're not doing any restoration. They're not doing any natural habitat work. I mean, that's what natural preservation is.
Max, you've gone over 10 minutes now.
Okay, I got one more thing I got to do. This is important because you said there was never a dump there. You have to give me the opportunity to prove to you that that's not true. The one useful thing in the environmental report were these aerial maps. Everything else was boilerplate. You see the time ticking away here, 55, 56, 57. So between 1948 and 1960, you can see the development was built during that time. Here we go. So now between 1960 and 64, you see the development continuing. There, now it's starting to spread south a little bit as the years go by, and there's more development coming up. You can see it's kind of slows down here a little bit. Sorry for the changing, but you see that. Hold on, I'm going to pause here. Sorry, I got to get out of this. You wanted to know where the dump is. That area. See this? Again, I told you I lived here. This is where we used to play here. And see this?
Max, if you can send me this information, that'd be great, so we can.
Well, it's great if you have it, but it's not great.
Yeah.
Okay, see this? Another one. That's the dump. That's the dump. So there was a dump. It's just because it wasn't an official village dump, we used to go there and dig through the old washing machines and stuff like that. I promise you that if you dig down a couple feet there, you're going to cover all kinds of garbage. Look, I respect overdevelopment a lot. They're a family business. They've been around for 75 years. I really genuinely believe they're good at what they do. The fact is, this PUD is not a good fit for our town. We have other options. There's been a ton of information that's just leading down one path, approval. I'm asking you, please provide information opposed to this as well as opposed to it. There's been affordability washing of this project. There's no affordable homes proposed with this, none.
Max, I look forward to receiving your information.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing me this time. I appreciate it very much. And I want to apologize for everyone for the over mic foul language earlier, but thanks for the time.
All right.
Can I address the the dump question and
No.
We're at 9 o'clock. I have a few people with their hands up. I want to at least get to the list that I wrote down.
Wait, I think this needs to be responded to because we're starting to create this platform for misinformation, and so I want some of this stuff to be clarified.
Greg, could you make it brief?
yes. So the pictures Max presented were from our phase 1 report. In addition to the phase 1, we did soil borings all along that area. Don't remember how often the borings were, but they're typically about 100 feet apart. None of our borings came back with any trash or material underneath that area that was shown. The area that was shown is the area of loose dirt fill. So that is the soil conditions that we've referred to and been quite open about in our public hearings. And as you can see by Max's photos, that is not the area that's being given by affordable housing, was implied earlier. It is the area we are retaining. And like I said, it's about 4 foot deep and will be excavated out underneath the street of Southgate and mitigated properly. And then basements will be put into the homes. But we have no reason to believe there's anything other than dirt fill underneath that area. And then as far as zoning comments back and forth, I do believe Max is correct in that it is a higher density zoning there on the northwest corner, but there's no reason why we couldn't build an RA development. So what we shared was the lowest density that could be built on that tract, not necessarily the highest. Most of the objections I've heard from folks feel we're already building too many houses. So if the feeling is they want us to build more, that's different than what most people have told us. And I also want to point out that is the area where the fill condition is. So I don't really know that it's appropriate to build more in that particular area.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Greg. All right, Judith.
Hey, Josue.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. I have to say, if I ask for 15 minutes of time to do my presentation, you just can't give that to every individual who wants that at a public meeting. That's not democracy. Now I want 15 minutes. Now so-and-so wants 15 minutes. I am for this PUD, and I do not appreciate listening to someone make an ongoing case about why it's a bad idea because they've got some alternative plan. This is a public meeting. Everybody gets treated the same theoretically.
Yes.
I just want to say that the history of resistance to development, especially from the people who are going to live near it, that's a long history, both in Yellow Springs and around the country. We love to be able to look out on the open field that somebody else owns. But it's not ours to make that decision. It's just the way I would feel if somebody told me, beyond what the village zoning law is, what I want to do on my own property. There are a lot of people in this village who want the PUD. Why do we want it? Because we've had a long history of support for affordable housing. The market rate housing, the duplexes and townhouses, they may meet the needs of some of our seniors. And then their big house here in the center of the village will be able to be for a larger family. But let's face it, a lot of families are not going to be able to afford those homes in RA. The affordable homes for really low and modest income are going to be those 28, hopefully up to 28 units of that land that's being donated to the village. That's significant amount of affordable housing. Has anybody looked at our housing needs assessment that we did a few years ago? There's a huge need for housing in this community. We are gentrifying because we don't have enough housing. You can never really, I don't think we can stop gentrification. We're a desirable community. Thing we can do is make sure there is more affordable homes so that or benefit all the wonderful amenities of our community, the Glen, you know, the schools, the swimming pool, all the nice extracurriculars that we all love and enjoy. RA does none of that. And I have to say, I really appreciate the work the staff has done. Yeah, somebody else has got some alternative plan. Well, you don't own the land. How are you going to make that happen? When is that housing going to get developed, all that extra affordable housing that you're proposing? I just don't see it. It just looks like a lot of roadblocks being thrown up, particularly, and I understand it. I think we are a species that can be as territorial as the next species. We don't like beautiful land that's near us to be developed. None of us like it. But OBERER owns this land. They are going to develop it and they have a right to. That's how they make a living. I work. I expect to make some profit from my work. I want to get a paycheck. There's nothing wrong with that. And I appreciate their willingness to have negotiated with the village to bring some things that we really need as a community. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Judith. All right, Eve.
Put myself off here.
Okay, I wasn't expecting to get in. I just want to say that I live on Randall Road and what has been previously designated as Margaret Drive. It's the little bump out on Randall Road. So I am directly impacted by this development on two sides. And I've always paid taxes based on a corner lot, even though Margaret Drive didn't quite exist. I moved here in 1987, and I was always aware that the fields behind me would be developed at some time. And various plans have come across, and I might be living on a corner. And I had to apply when I moved here for a variance. I was a potter, and I had to apply for a variance to have my kiln shed built on my yard that wasn't 25 feet in from residence, according to Residence A. So I actually had plans for previous developments for Residence A with roads and cul-de-sacs and property unannexed. So I've always been aware of this. And I want to say to my neighbor, Brooke, I'm very sorry that possibly your realtor or whoever sold you your house did not inform you of this. And quite frankly, your fence is not on your property. I don't mean this to be snarky, but it's not on your property. I had a fence put in around my yard because I have dogs, and I had to go with what was allowed on Residence A. So yes, I have very many setbacks. The extension of Southgate has always been on plans for decades. I have plans for this. And you probably pay your property taxes based on a corner lot in Residence A. And I'm sorry about that. And I'm sorry that somebody previously put a fence there. But basically, look at this. You have had the advantage of having a much larger yard than you own. And I've had the advantage of having a lovely field behind my house that I don't own. And yeah, I don't like that there's development there, but you know what? It's private property. The Struings owned it, and I was always aware that it was going to be developed at some point. So that said, getting that out of the way, my question really for OBERER is about the townhouses. Okay? The townhouses. Is there another possibility of a plan available? I looked at the 3-story townhouses and I didn't think that they really fit in the neighborhood. And by the way, I consider them beyond ugly, beyond ugly. I know we can't regulate ugly.
10
We
seconds.
can't regulate ugly, but is there a possibility of making them more cohesive? Or is the 3-story only because they're barricading into the hills? Is there some other option to their hideosity? That's my question.
Thank you, Eve.
Oh, wait, I have one more thing to ask.
You're at over three
Oh,
minutes. already.
Spillane,
Yeah.
Spillane, can I just go Spillane? Let me get some of Max crumbs. Spillane has always been an issue for me living here because it's dangerous to walk on. Okay? So put some sidewalks there. Goodbye.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. George, we'll follow up and some sort of written text so we can get through the questions. Sarah.
I just did my public service.
Oh. Sarah Sinclair. Okay, Kendra.
Hi.
Hi,
Thank
Kendra,
you.
welcome.
Give me a chance to talk. I didn't think you'd make it to me.
I'm trying to make it to down to Don Johnson on my list. I've got a couple ahead.
I mean, I live on Spillane Road, so of course I have a personal stake in this and I don't want to see the traffic. It is already very dangerous and I'm happy my kids are older. I do think there's going to be a lot of traffic. I question the traffic study and I would like to see the traffic study done by someone not paid by OBERER, an independent person perhaps, and I'd have more confidence in it. I would like to see a stub out to 68 so that it can eventually be connected to 68. I was offended by the answer on Monday that they didn't want to go to 68 because they didn't want people to cut through their neighborhood. You know, we cut through everybody's neighborhood, we can cut through theirs, and we should plan on someday connecting to 68 to alleviate the traffic and have a traffic flow pattern that's more similar to the rest of the South Side. I'm also just really disappointed with the way this looks. You know, you mentioned that this has been planned since 1977. This platting and this development is straight out of 1977. We have evolved since then. We have a lot of smart people in town that could come up with a better design, higher density housing maybe with large green spaces, much like Littlewood, right? They have a bunch of houses around a preserved green area. And that kind of design could be done. This is just a very ancient design, and it just isn't very, you know, we're modern. We're 50 years from 1977, and this is just a dumb old plat like in any other place. And we're in Yellow Springs, and we can perhaps ask them to come up with a better design than what they have. Another concern I have is with the HOA. I'm fine with the HOA, you know, looking at those community resources like the stormwater detention ponds, but I'm not good with, you know, the HOA saying, you know, whether you can have chickens, what color your house can be. You know, you can have tan, gray, beige, and cream, and that's going to be it. I want to see people that can come into town and choose purple with orange trim if they want to choose that in the neighborhood. The other thing that they mentioned, OBERER mentioned, was they're preserving some of the natural features, and they're preserving the tree line along the south side. But yet at the same time, they are taking out the one little woodlot in the corner, in the southeast corner, clearing it out and putting in a detention pond. So, you know, they're not maintaining that natural feature, and they're not maintaining the trees up in the PUD area either. So I have some question about, you know, maintaining the natural beauty of the site. Designs can be done to keep those features on the property. And then also too, I don't like the wet detention basins. They're going to be mosquitoes, geese. Just, you know, I'm wondering if dry detention ponds can be done. They're a little more attractive. And the wetland that they keep touting, I'm a wetland biologist, and it's not going to be the great environmental thing that they're touting. It's going to be a ditch full of cattails that, requires a lot of maintenance if you want to actually make it like a natural area.
Kendra, I'm sorry, we're at 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I was
Thank
done.
you. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right, John Henflin. John, you're able to unmute.
Thank you. I want to agree with those that have said that I think that this discussion would be better if there had been a clearer comparison of straight zoning with the PUD. And I want to especially compliment Jessica Thomas and Matt Kirk for actually asking questions that distinguished between the PUD and straight zoning, since that is the question before council. I would say the grand majority of this discussion has been talking about issues that basically are going to be resolved in the same direction, regardless of what council's decision is on the PUD. I support the PUD because, well, I like that they're going to be donating some land to the village. I hope that that land can be used by council to make affordable apartments. Patrick Lake, spoke in favor of affordable apartments, but against the PUD. But as far as I understand, if the PUD is not approved, there's absolutely zero chance that that apartment buildings will be built. Max Chrome did a lot of foot stomping on the point that some of the land is already zoned RC, but you can do anything in RC that you can do in RA. In theory, they could take advantage of some of the things that you can do in RC on that RC land, and I guess that could be good. But like, it doesn't actually prevent them from just doing single family homes, large lots, not with no playground, no park. So basically I don't think that this is that complicated, because there aren't that many differences between what will happen with straight zoning and the PUD. There will just be more shared open space with the PUD, and there will be that 1.4 acres for affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, Kathy.
Hi.
Welcome.
Here I am. How do I do my video?
We can see you now.
Okay. I do appreciate all the work you've done. I feel like it isn't a decision that you would have chosen had this land not been purchased, and now we have to make some decisions about it. I would have liked to have seen a lot more about the alternative. I'm disappointed that wasn't given enough time, because I feel like more information about the PUD, but also about what the choice is. That would be very important, to be able to talk to our council people what our concerns are. One of the things I don't see any sustainable, energy-friendly housing being built there, and that seems to be what Yellow Springs is about. And there were some soft answers to a question about geothermal yesterday. And it depended on the lot size, or it depended on, so if some of that could be more specific before the contract is signed, I think that would be very important, because these things have a way of coming back later when they're not well defined, and making disappointment really on people who might buy those houses and think they can do something. I was concerned about the land that was being donated, because in the RA map, it was really hard to see it. I looked on the OBERER proposal. It looked like on the on the alternative plan that there was open space around the area where they were donating that land on the PUD. And I went back and forth and thought, wait, that, you know, they weren't going to use that land, but now they're going to donate it. And I don't know exactly because I was judging, going back and forth visually. So I went out there and I looked as best I could without jumping on people's properties. And it looked like that land was hilly and difficult to build on, which make it more costly to build on. It may increase the labor. And so it looked like maybe there could be another site that was easier that could be donated that would
15
be
seconds, Kathy.
simpler. Okay. That might be, oh my goodness. So yeah, if there could be another site, if that was a possibility. And I wish that we had a way to invite other kinds of designs that were more typical of Yellow Springs. I wish there was a way.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, please email them to us. Thank you. All right, Ellis Jacob, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad I stayed this long, not just so I could speak, but also so I could hear Eve Flex say the word hideosity, which, if it's not a real word, Eve, should be. My main interest in this development, really any housing development in Yellow Springs, is whether it helps provide some affordable housing in our town, because that's really what we need. It's just so expensive to buy a house. It's expensive to rent here, and there aren't enough rental units. And so I do appreciate the effort that's gone into trying to get some diversity into the housing offerings at this particular site, although the units for sale don't sound like they're all that affordable. The fact that some land is being donated, that's significant, that's important, and really is to be celebrated. But I would challenge the staff and our elected officials to see whether there's something more that can be achieved along the line of affordable housing. Rental units are important, and while I understand that's not in OBERER hasn't figured out how to make a profit off of, smaller rental buildings. I don't think that shouldn't be the last word on the subject. So I would just urge everybody to dig in and see what else can be done along those lines.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Alice. Okay, Mark. Mark, I see you speaking. I need you to unmute. Okay. Oh, there you go.
Thank you. I thought I knew how to use Zoom, but evidently I don't. I'm looking up here because that's the monitor and my camera's over here. I apologize for discontinuity there. One, I appreciate all the effort that's gone into all of this work on council and staff and all that. I think there's a fundamental disconnect between what you should expect of OBERER, and that is a lot of the community that's against any of this expects OBERER to negotiate with themselves. And that just isn't realistic. They bought the property. They've come up with a plan to suggest that it's their responsibility to pay for additional studies outside the normal course of things, and to come up with other plans is just unrealistic. And I don't expect that. If the property was on the market and other interested buyer could have bought it then, and frankly, if you run all the numbers on OBERER's sale of the land, underlying land to the property owners, and to the profit margin on the house, the individual properties altogether, they're selling. Another interested buyer or group could step forward and make an offer to take the whole thing off OBERER's hands. But nobody's done that, even though there are people in opposition to their plans who have those sort of resources. So, you know, they step up with their wallet. That's a whole lot different than stepping up with complaints. And then as far on the affordable housing thing, which, you know, I don't really have a dog in that fight. If the village is really interested in properties to develop for affordable housing, we have a couple of options that come to mind real quickly. One is to get eminent domain on Antioch Southwest, gut that building, and put apartments in there. It's being done on commercial properties all over the country, and it could be done there. That property is sitting empty, and it'd be a good candidate for clearing the eminent domain. The other property is the former nursery at South High and West South College, where there's several acres there. There used to be a nursery. The property's been abandoned. I don't know if the property owner is paying taxes on it, but it's got problems and a lot of things we won't get into now. Josue.
30 seconds, Mark.
Yeah, Josue and Brian, we've both talked about this, but there are options for affordable housing in the community that doesn't make OBERER responsible for solving a civic problem that we have and we had before they came along. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Don Johnson, you're the last one on my list.
Great. Thank you, Josue. I want to thank council. I want to thank staff and my fellow villagers for spending the evening talking about something that's very important to our village, which is more housing. It may not be the housing that we all dream of. It may be the housing we all dream of. However, what we have to understand in all of this is that private property interests are very strong. Our Constitution protects private property almost more than almost anything else. It falls under the Commerce Clause. So what we need to understand is these folks own this land and they've come to the village with a proposal and worked with the village staff for many months on developing the proposal. It doesn't have to meet everything that we dream of. What it does have to do is check all the boxes, and it does. To deny them the PUD, or further, to try and deny them the Residence A that they could do without anything but a subdivision review, would be a taking. It would be denying them their private property interest. What a lot of folks forget is we had the glass farm. It's like 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And we had an opportunity to develop the glass farm. It was owned by the village. And a lot of work went into moving that forward. And half the town threw the basket up in the air and tried to recall council members and made a really large opposition to developing the glass farm, which would have been what we would consider affordable housing. So it's really interesting that we're asking a private property owner to solve a problem that we had in front of us, and we almost could have solved it, or at least attempted to make some contribution to solving it, and we pulled the plug on ourselves. I'm just kind of flabbergasted about the pendulum swing back and forth, but I do support this PUD. It's not my dream PUD. I would design it differently. You know I would, but it's not mine to design. So let's do the best we can with what we have in front of us. Let's ask for the things that we can ask for, understanding we can't ask for everything. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, everyone. We've gone 30 minutes over our 2-hour time slot, and I think.
Hey, Josue, I'm going to jump in because I would like to hear I see a few more hands. I don't think we've heard from Dino, Felicia, Eric.
We did hear from Dino.
Okay,
Sarah,
all
I
right.
see Sarah's hand up, and I called on her, and then I moved on to the next person.
I guess I'd like to hear from a few more people. I understand that some people may need to go. And I'm happy to take this meeting over as well, but there are a few more people I'd like to hear from. And I guess I also just want to say in this transition that I would suggest that people, also recognize the different motivations behind the speakers that we've, heard from tonight. And in particular, I guess, since my name has been used a lot, I want to highlight that I have pushed for that cost benefit analysis, which we will have on Monday. This is an ongoing process. But I'm just a little bit concerned about, again, people being honest, about their motivations versus, and that's what I've heard for the most part. But I would just suggest that everybody, think about like where people are speaking from. But Josue, if you don't mind, I'd like to,
we have 4 folks hands up: Sarah, Felicia, Eric, and Joanna. So
okay,
maybe we'll call on those folks and in there. All right, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. So my first point is, if I'm having issues with permissions on my phone to participate, I can only think of a lot of the residents that are not as tech savvy and cannot participate in these meetings because they are on Zoom and that they're not allowed to speak. And that goes along with, the additional need for transparency and comprehensive public comments. You can even hear by the end of this that there's still a lot of of agreement between the citizens, no matter what their opinion is, but just on the basic facts, which just goes to show that there needs to be more public participation and transparency and information available to the public before this goes forward. So after that, I absolutely want to see those per capita projections with the actual itemized expenses. I also think it's important that we clarify what's going to be happening with if there's an increase per capita or a decrease per capita. If there's an increase, are we going to have a tax adjustment? If there's a decrease, are we going to have a tax adjustment? Or is that money just going to go to some other project and no one sees a return in affordability? I want to clarify, again, there's no affordable housing physically being built in this project. So, what have we done with the comprehensive plan, within there to try to make things affordable if we're not meeting that goal with this specifically? Secondly, again, with the sidewalks, we could talk about building sidewalks on Spillane, but how many years is that going to take? How much money is that? And even if it's coming from grants, that's still our tax money coming in from grants that we're using. And why is that more beneficial than just diverting the traffic through a different way or just making a turn situation so they can't even go through existing neighborhoods? I don't understand the logic in that. Plus, with the additional traffic, that road is far too narrow to have a bunch of traffic going down. There's absolutely no way, even in the years it will take to get sidewalks, that it's going to be safe for pedestrians and 2 cars to cross on that road. Lastly, gosh, I think that's it, actually. I don't think I have a lastly, finally. So thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, Felicia.
Thank you, Josue, and thank you, Brian. I really do appreciate you. I appreciate you all, actually. I think one thing that I need to say first and foremost is people talk a lot about 1977 when the land was initially zoned, and I need to point out that a lot has changed in regards to our earning capacities as citizens since 1977. The worldwide global distribution for Antioch Bookplate is no longer. Morris Bean, Renee, we can go on and on. We all know that the economy has shifted tremendously since the campus is no longer viable in the way that it was in the 1970s. So we no longer. So then these citizens that we're looking at, first of all, putting elders in 3-story duplexes does not sound like a viability plan to me. When elders are looking to downsize, they're not looking to climb stairs and have more and have a brand new place that they don't have to worry about upkeep on. So that was not an argument that I could co-sign. I also want to say that I don't like this, my hands are tied, we do not have power. I'd like us all to revisit power. Other communities, when their counties and townships are looking at developers, they say, hey, developers, and they give them a Christmas list of demands. And I know the guys who are down to make these houses happen and everything. I totally get that. I'm a money person, I'm a capitalist. But these cities make their demands. They're like, we want a new school, we want a library, and all of those things are written in as things that developers acquiesce to doing, because citizens say, well, it's really great that we're going to have an extra however many families, but we want an extra park to play in, we want an extra pool to swim in, we want extra books in the library, and they make those demands. We want a brand new school, we want K-12, brand new buildings, and they get those things when they make those demands. So it's not our hands are tied, these are private property owners type of things. Citizens have power. So I'd like to mention that. And I also want to say that I think it's kind of tragic. The safety thing, really stressed about it. Everybody's already reiterated about the safety and walking, because we're a dog walking community, we're a walking community, we're a pushing stroller community. And I think that the traffic analysis conveniently omitted the very lethal and dangerous intersection of 68 and Hyde, which would be highly trafficked, to go to Beaver Creek, where people like to shop, and to go to Xenia and other points south. That corner has been a traditional loss of life. And I want to know if it was strategic, accidental, or whatever, that it was not included in the traffic analysis. People have died, people have lost their ability to walk, people have lost a lot on that corner for decades, and that needs to be looked at. Also, if it was so good to develop in 1977 and zoned, why has that not yet happened? I thank everybody for their patience, their time. Obviously, we need more time for discussion. That has clearly been demonstrated.
Thank you, Felicia. Eric?
Thank you, Josue. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. Marathon community meetings after 7 years, I guess I need to just become used to that. But thank you for the chance. I just want to say that, and I'm going to back up my wife's letter to the editor that was in the last paper, and I've been so kind of happy through the course of this meeting to hear fellow citizens who I vehemently disagreed with on a very contentious issue over the last year speaking and saying what I would want to say better than I could say. We're allowed to disagree on one thing and agree on another. It's called democracy, it's called community, and it's a very healthy thing. And so I want to thank fellow citizens who spoke up supporting the PUD. I'd just like to say I also support the PUD. We essentially live in a gated community, which seems the most anti-Yellow Springs I could possibly imagine. If my family wanted to move to this community today, we couldn't. There's nothing available, zero. There's nothing available to buy in this community. At any given time, there might be between 1 and 3 homes for sale. So at this point, any more homes is a more welcoming place than we are right now. We are essentially a gated community. If that sounds offensive, good, it should. That's what we are. We need more of everything. We need a ton of affordable housing. We need more of everything. I don't see another plan on the table. I don't see another developer, and they don't come out of the sky. They're not just going to show up tomorrow and say, oh, you want a 100 unit apartment building? Great, I'll build it for you. I wish they would. I wish they were there, but they're not. Wishing something doesn't make it happen. This is the plan in front of us. We need an infusion of people in this community. We don't need to have a litmus test on what kind of people they are. We don't need to debate whether they're going to dilute our community spirit or our creative culture. Who are we to make that determination? I thought we were a welcoming community. I support this PUD. We need more of everything. Like others have said, are there things aesthetically and otherwise that I'd like to see better than what I see now? Of course. Of course. It's not my right to dictate those things. The bottom line is I don't want to live in a gated community, and that's essentially what we live in today. I support this PUD. Thank you for all the work everybody's doing. If there's ways we can make it better, great. But saying no is not one of them. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, Joanna, you're the last one, Joanna.
Thank you, Josue. I guess Brian wanted us to disclose who we're representing I'm representing someone who's just ended up in Yellow Springs because I was displaced from the community where I grew up because of high density housing and the subsequent domino effect of problems that they create as far as gentrification and displacement. And I'm representing, I guess, on behalf of families and parents in this community whose children will ultimately not be able to come back and call Yellow Springs home. So I guess that's a voice that I'm representing here. My concerns are from an environmental standpoint. For a community that just commissioned a climate action report and even has sustainable Yellow Springs as a mission statement and a comprehensive land use plan that comments on a commitment to sustainability. When we have the U.S. Green Building Council and we have green building codes in other places of the country that are going backwards and trying to mitigate the kinds of problems that kind of development creates in their communities because of problems stem from ideals from the 70s. And like Felicia stated before, inflation has been an issue and land use is an issue. And sustainable smart growth communities have open space high up on the list of what they're trying to preserve. I also think it's really important to have a objective second party environmental impact report, especially because it states within the Army Stream Impact Report that the project site lies within the range of the Indiana bat, a federally listed endangered species in the northern long-eared bat, federally listed threatened species. So on that basis alone, not to mention the dredge that's going to end up in tributaries of the Little Miami River, which goes through a state park, and people here are supposed to be naturalists and
Joanna, I think we lost your signal there. Okay. Joanna?
comprehensive land use plan and statement on sustainability reports to care about. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Joanna. We lost you there for a bit.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah. It's okay.
But I think we got the key points.
Yes.
About the bats and the dredge. So we'll address that.
All right. I want to thank everyone for their patience. Meeting been at this for 2 hours and 42 minutes. I appreciate everyone's commentary, your thoughtful feedback, your insights. If there's anything that we didn't capture here, or you want to send any additional questions, please write them in. We'll forward everything that we have received onto council for the packet. There'll be many of the questions answered for that packet. There'll be some that obviously require more work, and there are some questions that we just might not be able to get to because of the nature of the questions. So with that said, I want to thank everyone for their commitment to this and their contributions. And please send in any additional comments or remarks in writing, and we'll get them to council. Any closing remarks, Brian or Denise? I think we're
Josue, I just want to thank you. Yeah, this is, this is part of the process, and I want to remind everybody that we have 2 more council meetings. So we will continue to discuss. I've mentioned it many times on Monday, but we have a Q&A doc that we're sharing with folks. We have all the other documents that we have gathered that we will be sharing as well. And we want to continue to collect those questions and make sure those responses are out there. I also want to thank George and Greg for being here again, and also being open to answering these questions. And lastly, I just want to say I really appreciate the feedback. And apparently, there's some suggestion that I'm trying to drive this, in some rapid manner, but we've been at it for almost 2 years, and we're going to continue to make sure we are responsive And that's what I think I and the rest of council are dedicated to. And so thanks to the village team.
All right, excellent. Thank you, everyone. I wish you all good night. Please join the 2 upcoming hearings.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.